Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Cameras and Coffee, where I am finally, for the first time in 7 years, enjoying Yemeni Sinani coffee. It's my favorite, absolute favorite type of coffee, especially this peaberry, and it has been 7 years since I've been able to find someplace that's selling it. So this is from Mocha Bun in Canada. So for those of you interested, absolutely fantastic stuff. So, at any rate, today, let's talk about how ridiculously complicated modern digital cameras are. So I have, for about another week or so, this Fuji GFX 100S and this IRIX 45mm lens. And I've been using them quite a bit because I only have them for a short time before I have to return them to the owner. And I want to be able to have enough photos to make a review of the camera and of the lens. So, amazing camera. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm using that camera. It's just like, holy cow. Fuji's, the reason to buy that camera is not because it's medium format. It's not because it's super capable. It's because Fuji's color science backing up their sensors is staggeringly good. I cannot wait to try another, like a Fuji M43 camera, just to see if it's equally as good. I have a suspicion that it is. That's a magnificent camera. I'm editing photos from it and just consistently blown away by how intense and amazing the colors are and how realistic the details in the images are. So it doesn't hurt that IRIX lens is also spectacular. So at any rate, but as I'm using it, I thought, it would be fun because it's a brand new-ish camera. It's the newest camera I've got right now. Let's make a video manual about it. 3 parts, just like we have the standard format here for digital cameras. And so I wrote out the entire script, and there were so many functions on the camera. I read the entire manual. There are still functions on the camera I don't understand, and don't understand what they're for, quite frankly. And the script was 14 pages long. To put that in perspective, when I do like a Rebel, I finished the Rebel T7 and T5 scripts just recently and recorded one of those so far. Those were 6 pages, 7 pages long, okay? So, and that's a long script for me. Normally, if I just take a film camera, a 35mm SLR from the 60s or 70s, that's a 2-page script. So 14 pages is intense. And I thought, I don't know. Like, I'm actually not going to make a full video manual for it because there's so much that camera does that I don't feel comfortable trying to explain. And then I sat down and I have a Sony A7S III coming for a handful of days at the end of this month because I want to test drive one before buying it. And I wrote the script for that, planning to do a full video manual, and I might actually, haven't decided yet, but the script is 18 pages long, I think. It's either 18 pages or 22, something like that. It's insane. Absolutely insane how much there is on that camera. And it's intimidating to me because the A5000 script by comparison was also about 8 or 9 pages. So and all of those added pages are in the menu system. The newer the digital camera, so the 3-part videos that I do are the overview, the functions, and then the menu system. All of that added length of these modern cameras compared to, say, like the Rebel T5 are in the menu system. So there are so many menu items and custom functions in these cameras that I honestly don't want to spend the money buying the A7S III now because I don't want to go through trying to figure out what all of these new functions are and configuring the whole thing. It's an expensive camera for me to spend a ton of time configuring it, when realistically the only thing the A7S III offers me over the A7S II for my purposes is a faster maximum shutter speed in 4K, which is what I need it for. And then I started looking at the other cameras I have slotted to borrow this summer, which include the EOS R5, the Nikon Z9 or Z9 II, I forget whichever. If there's a 2, then it's the 2. And I'm really actually very excited about the Z9 II because it comes with the 58mm 0.95. I'm really looking forward to that. Anyway, So I'm looking at those, and I haven't even started the scripts on them, and I kind of don't even want to think about making video manuals of them because I can't imagine they're going to be less complicated than this Fuji or the Sony. Digital cameras are too complicated. Like, there's too much now. It's official. Like, if a camera is so complicated that someone who talks about photography, who understands how to use most, if not all, functions on a camera, just by picking it up, looks at it and says, this is too much nonsense. Well, that's probably too much nonsense in the camera. I think there's this misconception that throwing tons of features at something is what people want. And certainly there are going to be a handful of people in the world who want that. And yes, there are probably a handful of people in the world who might even use more than one or two configurations and settings on some of these hyper-complex cameras. I think the instinct in having all of these functions is to say, let's make this one camera and then have it be completely customizable to what anyone could potentially ever want it to be and do out of the box. Admirable inclination, don't get me wrong. Also super intimidating. So the question then is, who are these new cameras actually for? Well, they aren't for entry-level users, obviously, not just by the price point, but by the complexity of them. And if I, as someone who understands the majority of these functions and can set up a camera, a brand new camera, pretty quickly without having to reference a instruction manual for very many things, looks at it and is intimidated by how much it can do, just imagine somebody who's going from a cell phone to something like that. As I was recording just recently the EOS T5, Rebel T5 instruction manual, and just going through all of these different functions, and just like, I understood the comments that I get very often on this channel of thank you for explaining it. I had no idea what all of this stuff was. Camera makers, dial back the complexity. Like, yes, certainly there are people who could use that complexity. Maybe it could be buried under an advanced user mode. Out of the box, the camera comes with many, many things set to a default. PASM modes, something like that. Most functions set to just their standard functionality, and make it streamlined. Nice streamlined mode. Over time, if people want to access some of those more complex functions, yeah, advanced mode opens up all kinds of added tabs. That would make the cameras significantly less intimidating. And if that basic user mode had only the 5 or 10% of functions that people use and adjust most often accessible, and then all of the rest of the stuff, 4K or 1080p or 720, whatever video settings, no one needs 1080p on a $3,700 camera, Sony. Just going to point that out. At any rate, if somebody wants to access those things, then they can. But it feels like camera makers today are going back to the late 90s, early 2000s inclination of throw tons of stuff at these cameras. People want stuff. No, people don't want stuff. If people wanted stuff, they wouldn't be using their cell phones for 99.9 or whatever percentage of photography is done with cell phones nowadays. What people want is the same thing that George Eastman 140 years ago recognized that people want. Simplicity. Give them a box camera with a shutter button and maybe an aperture. Very simple. Give us digital cameras that have fewer options and many things that don't need to be options set to a default of, and it doesn't even have to be changeable. Why does a mirrorless camera need to have the ability to say yes or no, do or don't fire with a lens mounted? That should just by default be the camera will fire with no lens so that lenses without electronic contacts can be used. But what benefit do we have from it not being turned on? Like, okay, so I can't take a picture with no lens, but what do I not know if there's a lens on the camera just by looking at it? So functions like that, there are things that could be eliminated from the menu and just always turned on, just left to run in the background like that. That's just the first one that comes to mind. I'm sure that if I sat down and marked up my, printer destroying outline for the A7S III, I could probably come up with a good number more of those things. At any rate, so what I would like to hear from you guys who are watching this is what is your thoughts, of course, on modern digital cameras. Are they too complicated, not complicated enough, just right? What things do you like about them, or do you find irksome about them? Things like that. I think, tell me, am I on track? Am I off base? Is there a genius in simplicity, or is there a genius in extreme complexity? So anyway, tangent over. So that's the point of today's video. Digital cameras are too darn complex. See you guys in the next Cameras and Coffee. Have a good day.